Collins' office because they have a presentation on behalf of Senator Collins. And I hope that you all had the opportunity as well to see the video that came out from the office talking about that project.
Well, good morning. Usually Kara goes first and I go second. But today I want to introduce myself. I'm helping to manage the 2nd Congressional District for Senator Collins. It's my 5th Collins campaign, so I'm starting to get the hang of it. And also I wanted to say, as a way of letting you get to know me a little bit, that for 39 years I worked at Husson University. And we're very proud of our graduates at Husson, and 2 of them are right back there. Adrian Bennett and former Governor Paul LePage. So, isn't that wonderful? So we must be doing something right at Husson, right, Adrian? So what I do is all the grunt work kind of stuff, events, signs, fundraisers, trying to keep information out to everybody. So my email is hard to remember, julie@susancollins.com. So if there's ever anything I can do, please let me know. And I'm very pleased to introduce you today, my friend, the other side of the Julie and Carol show that's going on here. Carol Woodcock has been with the Senator since day one. And she is an outstanding public service, and we all owe her a great hand and a thank you. So please welcome Carol Woodcock.
I thought before I started talking about the campaign, I'd just give you a few little highlights of what has happened in the last year with the Senator excuse me, in DC. Just a couple of her accomplishments, just to name a few, because even though we all know how partisan and frankly quite nauseating DC is, the Senator still is able to get a number of accomplishments done. She's always working for the state of Maine. One of the things that hasn't gotten a lot of attention, but was really very important is, particularly for surviving military and retiring spouses, is what was referred to as the military widow's tax. That was an unfair offset for survivor benefits that's prevented as many as 67,000 surviving spouses, and 260 of those live in Maine, from receiving full benefits that they deserved. She found out about that, introduced legislation, and it passed into law this year. So we had heard about some of these veterans. I'm sure Governor LePage is aware of them as well. It was a very big issue, and so she worked to get that legislation signed into law. So for those 260 people in Maine, that's a big deal. Another thing that obviously everybody's been working on it is the high cost of prescription drugs and all types of medical expenses. And she had been involved in getting a medical expense deduction passed in the 2017 tax law, but it was going to expire. And so she was one of the people that had it extended in 2019 for another 2 years. So that's very important for individuals that have a lot of medical expenses to have it deducted. So that was very important. Something that she actually was just honored for recently was the work that she's done for Lyme disease. She held a hearing up here in Orono, because the University of Maine has been doing a lot of work on ticks as well. And she was able to pass a bill called the Tick Act. And they've changed, since it became law, they've changed the name of it to the Kay Hagan Tick Act. That's named after a former United States Senator who died from one of the diseases that you can get from ticks. But that is going to help set up or provide additional funding for a number of studies that are going to ticks, and I think it will help in Maine as well. Maine has one of the highest number of people that have been affected by tick-borne diseases. She's also been a real champion for increasing the spending for the National Institutes of Health. She championed a $2.6 billion increase for the NIH. A lot of that funding has gone to Alzheimer research, which, as we all know, that's something that's very important in Maine, in part because we have such a large number of elderly individuals. Just another couple of things I thought I'd mention. We all know how important the Maine Maritime Academy is in Maine, and she was able to get the funding for a new training ship for $300 million for this year. She also, in her role for the Appropriations Committee, she's been able to continue to get funding for Portsmouth Naval Shipyard and Bath Iron Works. There's the number of jobs at those two facilities is, I don't know the numbers, but they're very important to the state's economy, and it's very important that those projects continue to go there. So there's a lot of other things that I don't want to go on and on. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer. So now I'm going to go back to the campaign. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, for some of you that were here, this race is the most targeted race in the country, and I think we all know why, and that's because they were hoping to flip the United States Senate. They're hoping that it'll be run by the Democrats instead of by the Republicans. The outside Democratic and dark money groups have already spent more than any of the other targeted states. There's about 4 or 5 states that they're targeting, but most of the focus is on Maine. One of the groups, Maine Momentum, has already spent $2 million in TV, radio, and digital ads. And I know you've all seen a lot of them. Every time I turn on my computer, I see them, and it's awful. Sarah Gideon is running ads on TV. I'm sure you've seen them, and she's saying that she's criticizing Senator Collins for voting with the president 94% of the time. She obviously thinks that's an effective message.
We think that's great.
Thank you, Arthur. Well, she obviously thinks it's not, and that's the message that she's getting out. So I'm glad to hear that you support that. The Senator Collins campaign is up and running, as Julie told you. We have an office in Bangor. We have one down in Westbrook. And we've got a number of people working on it, as well as we have the Republican National Senatorial Committee has staff here as well. And they're getting up and running. There's been a number of television ads, and they're going to continue with the ads, digital ads, and trying to get as much out as possible. I would like to take just a minute to talk about the impeachment trial that was going on in the Senate a couple of weeks ago. Senator Collins has always stood up for a fair process. That's the role she has always played in every debate throughout her Senate career. When she played that role and advocated for a fair process during Justice Kavanaugh's confirmation, you all said, "Thank you, that's the greatest speech I've ever heard." You can't expect her to stand up for the process only when it's convenient. She opposed Democrats' attempts to play partisan games at the beginning of the trial to call witnesses. She voted against 10 Democratic amendments. Now that it's all over and President Trump has been acquitted, I hope you are proud to have a senator who will stand up for fairness and for due process and for what's right. Now back to the campaign. To compound the problem, we have to deal with ranked choice voting, just as we did with Bruce Poliquin. And we all know what happened there, which was just horribly unfair. And Senator Collins is now the only Republican left in Congress from New England, and she is the only statewide Republican in Maine that has consistently achieved well over 50% of the vote. The makeup of registered voters in Maine has changed significantly since Senator Collins' last election. Now, the makeup is 27% are registered Republican, 33% are registered as Democrats, and 35% are registered as independents. We need independents to win races, all the races in Maine, not just Senator Collins' race. And we need to work together to attract these independents. We know that there are issues that are important to you where you disagree with Senator Collins. But I also know that on the majority of issues that are important to you, like the Trump tax cut, federal judges, border security, you and Senator Collins share the same view. And Senator Collins is committed to keeping this seat Republican. Again, the last Republican in all of New England. You've seen the dark money ads against Senator Collins. They're spending millions to lie about her and try to defeat her. As Republicans, we need to ask ourselves, why are they spending so much money to defeat her? The answer is quite simple. They want the Democrats to take control of the Senate, but they can't take control of the Senate as long as Senator Collins wins. I can assure you that there's two people who want you to vote for Senator Collins. One is the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, and two is our President, President Trump. Sure, does anybody have any questions? Either on the federal level or the campaign level? I may need Julie for the campaign. Yes, Arthur.
Not so much of a question, but a form of applause and endorsement. At the recent state committee meeting, when the subject of the senator came up, and you were talking about voter registration, and that also goes back to ranked choice voting. Our side has not registered votes in this state for 50 years. No concerted effort, and our opponents have done it every single year. Just out of high school grads, 13,000 graduate out of high schools in Maine every year. The Dems register 3,000. We don't register any. Over the last 35 years, the MPAs existed. Figure it out. 3,000 a year, 35 years. And the Dems and Greens combined just barely have 100,000 more than we do in the state. However, they do have 100,000 more registered voters in the state. Our senator can't throw them bones when they're critical. We must win. Democrats, and I far be it from me to argue with you, Carol, but I just did different verbiage. I don't call them independents. The unenrolled contain strong Democrats, weak Republicans, strong Republicans. Our job is to identify the strong Republicans, the weak Republicans, get them to vote. 30% Republicans didn't vote in the last election. That's 80,000. Sean Moody would be governor for 50,000 votes. For 50,000 and 80,000 Republicans didn't vote. So this is up to us, each one of us in our towns. Ranked choice voting. Our share in Washington County of 70,000 votes is 1,800 signatures, or not 70,000 votes. We need 70,000, maybe 80,000. Let's say 80,000 ranked choice voting signatures. Washington County's share of that is 2,000. We have 50 towns almost. That's 40 signatures per town. Some of our towns don't have 50 voters. So that means other towns need to make it up. So be thinking in terms of when you go home, in your town, you need to be looking to get 80 signatures to fight ranked choice voting, to protect the president, and to get more people out to vote to help re-elect Senator Collins, and to elect other Republicans from school board on up to the White House. So applause to Senator. People know I've been pretty hard on, Carol and I've talked about over the years, pretty hard to the Senate. But like my friend Ray Richardson, who I call the Sean Hannity of Maine, it's real simple. When my president says, I want this candidate, I'm marching. Susan Collins is going to get reelected. I'm for Susan Collins. I hope every one of you remember she's a Republican. There were all kinds of people, my own town, goddammit, who didn't vote for Bruce Poliquin last time. 8 votes per town in the 2nd district. That's 4 cards of 2 people, and he would have been elected election night. Let's re-elect Susan Collins and all our great Republican candidates.
Did anyone else have a question?
The only question I would ask, looking at a rear Barry now, after what we just went through, how does Senator Collins address the fact that the Trump vote was not an acquittal? Does she compare that with what we went through with Clinton and what he did in the West? How does she relate both of those charges? The charges that Clinton had these people was 97 votes of conviction. But there was no charge against Trump. There was no nothing. There was no treason. There was no misappropriation. No charges against him. Tom Brokaw had about reform this vote. They said there was nothing there to charge Trump with. They had no conviction. And still the Democrats went through and spent billions of our money over this file we went through.
I don't think her job as a senator was to compare the charges between President Clinton and President Trump. Her job really was to listen to the evidence and decide whether or not the House leaders had proved the case against President Trump. She didn't think that they did, and that's why she voted to acquit him. And so that was as simple as that. She didn't think that the case was that he fit the category of having committed, in the actions that deserved to be convicted.
She said that apples and oranges.
Well, she didn't use those terms, but they were very different trials. So that was not her task.
Just
Carol?
me, and I don't know about the rest of it. You know, it was just such a terrible episode.
It was indeed,
That's
absolutely.
going to be a blight on our country for years to come. And like they said, like Trump said, this is going to be inroad for impeachment. If the opposing party doesn't like what the president does, impeachment. It's going to be a slam dunk. You can bet rest assured that Democrats take over the Congress, and after Trump, bad.
Well-
Republicans take over, bad. It'll be impeachment.
I understand your concern, and I certainly hope you're wrong, but that's exactly why we can't let the Democrats take control of the Senate.
Carol?
Yes.
Just one thing to speak to that, because it's a great question. Barack Obama said elections have consequences. I disagree with him. Losing elections have consequences. We lost the U.S. House and we helped in the 2nd District. We're all here. We're all part of that problem that Bruce Poliquin wasn't reelected. I'm pointing fingers at me mostly, okay? We're all in this together as Republicans. When a Republican loses, we're all supposedly Republicans here. It's our fault. So if the U.S. House decides they don't like the color of the president's socks, they can impeach him for that. If they have the majority and they have the votes. Doesn't matter what you and I think are high crimes and misdemeanors. It's what Congress has the votes to do. And it is not anybody's responsibility in the U.S. Senate to decide, just as Nancy Pelosi was trying to get the Senate to perform what she wanted, it's not the U.S. Senate's prerogative to tell the U.S. House how to behave. Our job is to tell the House how to behave by electing them a Republican majority. That's where we failed. That's where the problem started. Ask our governor how much fun he had the last 6 years of his administration with Democrat majorities in the main House. Was it fun, sir? We must
Thank you,
win.
Arthur. We're running out of time.